Right, guys, let's finish out Ephesians strong. As we covered yesterday, we are talking about the practical implications of living in unity. So we covered marriage yesterday. Today, Paul shows us how to live in unity in your family and how to live in unity through your workplace. Now, obviously, the key word yesterday was really around submission, and it was around coming under your authorities and honouring their lead, their direction on things. So we start Ephesians 6 with children. He's speaking directly to children as those who primarily must submit. And he gives the first commandment that has a promise in the Bible. This is the one that says, honour your father and mother that it may go well with you and you will live long in the land. Love the fact that honour is connected to blessing, and honour even grants us blessing when we give it truly. That God will grant long life to those who truly can honour their parents. But it goes on to say, fathers, do not provoke your children. And then in the next section that talks to slaves, bond servants, those who are under masters, it says, obey those with a sincere heart as you would Christ. But then it also gives an instruction to the masters. What's really groundbreaking and revolutionary about this part of the Bible and this instruction that Paul is giving us is that he's instructing wives as the submissive partner, but he's also instructing husbands and giving them clear guidance. He's instructing children as the supposedly or contextually and culturally inferior part of the family, but then he's also instructing fathers, parents. And the same is true with bond servants and masters. What would have been very common in the time is that those initially being given their instruction in these three sections would have had lots of rules and regulations to live by. But husbands, parents, masters, they would have had very, very little. And Paul here, what he's saying, even though these people are addressed second, he's giving them standards to live by. And that's kind of revolutionary for the biblical times. It's you know, as far as everybody was concerned, the man, the wealth owner, the money holder was sort of not above the law. But Paul is very clearly here giving them standards to live by in order to honour God and to promote unity. That same theme again. So just a really great instructions for life there. And then we go on to the armour of God. And what stands out for me in verse 10 and 11 is that we're really given two instructions here. Be strong in the Lord and put on the whole armour of God. Those are the two things that we need to do. Be strong in the Lord, not in our own strength, not seeming to have all the answers, all the wisdom, or all the physical strength that we need to get through, but finding our strength in the Lord, making ourselves strong in his standing authority, in our identity in him, and then putting on the armour of God, which we'll talk about in a second, so that you will be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. If you've just read the last few chapters of Ephesians, you could be mistaken for thinking that really living a godly life is all about the way that you treat others, the way that you live alongside the people that God puts in your life. But finally, at the end of this letter, we are reminded that everything that we do is not against flesh and blood. It's not simply about loving your brother, submitting to one another, building unity in the faith. There is a much bigger thing at play here, and it's the most important thing that Paul wants to leave us with as a reminder as we step away from this book. He's saying there is something bigger. We do not wrestle with flesh and blood. And I think actually all the other instructions in this book are a reminder to not get caught up in arguments and disagreements with our brothers and sisters. It's actually saying live at peace with one another so that you can focus on what's really important, which is the spiritual fight that we are in against the authorities, the powers over this present darkness, spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. If you really want to make a difference, if you really want to live a God-honouring life, this is the task. This is the fight that you should be bearing in mind as you live. We get so caught up with fights and disagreements between each other that we're distracted from the real thing that we're called to protect ourselves from. So I think that, really the book is an instruction about how to live with one another. First of all, we're given our identity, and then we're given some practical ways that we can live in unity with one another. And then finally, we're reminded The reason why we should live in unity with one another is so that we can fight the true fight, which is the fight of the Spirit in our lives. And Paul gives us 6 things that we need to bear in mind. Remember that he would have written this in close proximity to Roman soldiers. So he would have been seeing their weaponry and their armour all the time. And first of all, he gives us 3 things that we need to put on. The 3 things that we need to have on us, which is the belt of truth. A belt would have gone underneath all the armour, and it really gathered up all of the Roman soldiers' tunic and layers that they wore so that they were ready to run, so that they wouldn't trip over anything. The belt of truth will stop you tripping over the other things that can get underfoot as you walk through life. So make sure it's all fastened with truth. Make sure it's all based on the foundation of truth. Put on the breastplate of righteousness. You know, this protected all of their vital organs, but it wasn't a righteousness that they earned. It was a righteousness that they were given by Christ. Our confidence is our breastplate of righteousness, the confidence of our identity in him. And it's also, you know, our right living will give us confidence. If we're not in the wrong places at the wrong times, if we're not hanging out with the wrong people, then those fiery arrows that the enemy would like to accuse us with or like to lodge into our lives, they won't be able to stand. They won't be able to stick to us because of the righteous life that we live. And put those shoes on your feet, the readiness that comes with the gospel of peace. You know, shoes were not necessarily a guarantee in these days for soldiers marching to battle, but shoes prepare us for any ground that we need to walk on. And so the gospel, we need to be prepared at all times to go and share the gospel. But he also shares 3 things that we need to take with us: a shield of faith, this big, strong defense that will turn everything in our lives to be obedient to Christ. Every accusation of the enemy, every lie, everything that's thrown against us, thrown against that shield, will become obedient to Christ through faith. We need to take up the helmet of salvation. Sometimes in the Bible, this is referred to as the helmet of the hope of salvation, that really will guard our mind against discouragement, despair. The soldiers in these days would have worn helmets that had big plumes that show what rank they are or what army they belong to. And that's what we're talking about here, is like, put on the helmet that distinguishes who you are and where you are. And the sword of the Spirit, of course, the sword of the power of God, and pray at all times. Incredible verses, so much to pull out here. But what I would love to know as we finish up Ephesians together is, how do you put on the armour of God? What does that mean to you? How do you enact that every day? Maybe you don't, but perhaps there are things that God is encouraging you to do that will equip you for the spiritual battle that we're a part of. I would just love to hear from you what that looks like for you.